Welcome to the Social Academic with Jennifer van Alstyne. This week, how to communicate your academic life this holiday season. Let's talk about the people we love. Chances are you're spending time this holiday season with friends and family outside your specialty. Whether you're a student or faculty member, explaining how and what you do can feel overwhelming. Maybe you're like PhD student Andrew Martinez, who recalled returning home as an undergraduate. Quote, I also began living two lives, my at-home life, where I did not speak much about the day-to-day experiences of college, but shared enough for everyone to think I was doing perfectly fine. And my at-school life, where I relied heavily on my closest friends and trusted mentors to help me adjust and feel like I belonged. If you're a grad student, almost any point in the process can be anxiety-provoking. If you haven't checked out Elia Wong's article in The Atlantic, it emphasizes the pervasiveness of mental health issues associated with graduate school. Spending time with people we love, our friends and family, it doesn't have to create anxiety. It can be great for your mental health as long as you take care of yourself. There are a lot of articles about college students headed home for the holidays, but what about graduate students and faculty like you? Living at school wasn't new. Leaving was. When I told Matthew I was writing this blog post, he said, it's probably even harder for you. He said that because I don't have a whole lot of family. My parents both passed away before I went to college, and since then I've spent holidays with other people's wonderful, sometimes crazy families. I told him in a way I was lucky. I had a lot of practice talking with strangers about holiday tables. Some of those people I grew to love. Leaving the academy for me anytime was a big deal. I went to boarding school in upstate New York, so living at school wasn't new. Leaving it was. During undergrad, I was a resident assistant during the school year. I took summer classes to stay in the dorms and later worked full-time as a conference coordinator on campus. When I went off to my MFA in Boulder, Colorado, I moved right into on-campus housing where I was a resident assistant yet again. Leaving campus was my different world. And because I was never going home to family, it meant new people to meet and engage with at the times of year I most needed connection. So how do you have a real conversation about how and what you do in your academic life? Ask yourself these questions. What is the impact of my work? What part will be of most interest to this group? And what can I compare it to? What is the impact of your work? Think this is a big question. You are right. But that doesn't mean that it has to be a hard one. It doesn't matter if you're a graduate student or a senior faculty member. Impact helps us measure why we do what we do. I'm a poet, and that means that people love asking me why and what are you going to do with that for years. When I went on to get graduate degrees in writing and literature, the questions only intensified. Here are my general responses to conversations about what I do with people outside the poetry niche. I'm a poet. I put words together to examine things in my life in new ways. I write poetry because it's a fun exercise that helps me think creatively. Poetry is what I create. I also like looking at poetry critically. By reading each word and line individually, I sometimes see cool ways other poets practice their craft. I specifically look at how other poets use language to talk about their hometown and local area and how they look at the natural landscape. What if I told you that these are 3 or 4 different conversations? Most people are only interested in the first bullet points. They want to know what and a basic why. Others ask a question, but guess what? It's actually easier to get more specific about our work, so start somewhere big. Most people stop and they try and find a way to connect. That's what conversation is about. The connection between what you do and what they know about it. That's how we can relate. For people that need justification for writing poetry, I talk about my critical interests. For people that want to know about money, I tell them, yeah, they're right. Poetry is a hard field. And then I tell them about the importance for the continued study of poetry and all types of media. And you know what? Almost no one asks about money again. What will be of most interest to this group? You do a lot of different things in your life. The best way to connect with people is by telling stories. Think about a few key occasions or specific things you could tell them about. For instance, you could talk about a lesson or project that your students found helpful. You could talk about a situation that you had to resolve or a funny thing that happened on campus. You could walk them through a single process, like the process of submitting an academic journal article, or say, talk about the steps to pick out a PhD programs to apply to. You could talk about a single paper or project that you worked on and what that was like for you. Maybe you had a big conference to prepare for and got swamped, and you ended up writing the whole thing on the plane. You managed to get it done and have a successful presentation, and even had a couple good questions. When it was over, you were starving because you were so nervous, you weren't prepared, and you forgot to eat. Your friends and family may not care about the details of the paper or your results, but they'd love to hear about what happened in relation to the presentation, down to the great restaurant you found around the corner of the conference hotel. To put it this way, in order to understand why your project results were important depends upon understanding how and why conferences are important. A story is a great way to tell people how and why something is important to you. What can I compare this to? What about when people ask about the big issues like the academic job market or the publishing industry? What about the people who ask about your next book or promotion or when your dissertation or thesis will be done? Be honest, most people don't know these questions are as anxiety-provoking as they are. You can say things like, I hope to graduate by this date, but the research that I do actually takes a lot of work, so it could be longer. Or something like, thanks for asking. I'm not sure, but I'll let you know. You could say, I'm not planning a book project right now because I'm focusing on teaching. Teaching is important to me because of this, and this. Or even something interjective, like, my students keep me busy enough. I don't have time for that right now. If someone's being really pushy, you can even say something like, honestly, I just spent a few months thinking about this. I'd rather hear about you, and turn the conversation on them. By being informative rather than defensive, you actually have more control over the chat. This holiday season, it's totally okay to be anxious. It's okay to be depressed or frustrated, and it's okay to talk about it if you want. It's also okay to say no thank you. The best way to make sure that you have a good time is by setting up expectations in advance. Let people know if there's something that you don't want to talk about. Your friends and family, they love you. This holiday season, it's important to remember that people care about you first and your work second. They want to know how your work makes you happy, or if it frustrates you, how they can help. Let's meet them halfway. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter and Instagram.